Good evening, y'all.
Good evening.
Good to see y'all on today and not virtual due to the snow last week. I'd like to call to order the 2022-2023 Redistricting Committee of the Memphis City Council. Mr. Backus, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilman Carlisle. Councilwoman Johnson. Councilman Ford. Councilman Canale. Councilman Corvette. Councilwoman Swearingen Washington. Councilman Smiley. Councilman Warren. Councilman Jones.
Here.
Councilman Robinson. Councilwoman Logan. Councilman Morgan. Committeeman Boyd. Committeewoman Hyman.
Present.
Committeeman Harris. Committeeman McKinney. Committeewoman Curry. Committeewoman Guerrero. Committeeman Randolph.
Present.
Committeewoman White.
Present.
Committeeman Moore.
Present.
Committeewoman Bennett.
Present.
Committeeman OJ. Chair Thomas. Chair Easter Thomas.
Present. Thank you, Mr. Backus. Welcome you all again. This is our third meeting, and just to reiterate a few things from last meeting that we had on the 31st, January 31st. April 14th is the deadline that the Election Commission has placed for us to send anything if we do there. That means that that's the deadline after City Council makes a full vote. So not to see that as April 14th for this committee, but see that as April 14th for the City Council. So meaning that our deadline as a committee, if we are submitting something to the full council, needs to be done, I would say, by end of March as best possible. So just to keep that in mind. Also, you also received that in a letter communication that I sent to you all via email. Also, we received communication via email that I sent to the entire committee, council, and committee members addressing a concern about the legal process and Open Meetings Act. Attorney Alloway was on the agenda, is on the agenda to speak to that, but he's not here yet. Are there any comments or questions or anything that needs to be addressed before this committee today?
I would like
Councilman Jones and
I yield too.
okay. Mr. Randolph.
I prepared a statement, if you all don't mind, about the redistricting class that we held. So if you'll allow me maybe 2 minutes to read it.
Proceed.
Some of the community members on the committee expressed a desire to learn more about redistricting and the redistricting process because we want to help produce a fair map by our April deadline. We look at you, the city council members, as having experience with redistricting and having the benefit of being educated by Alan Wade, the council's legal advisor, who bore the responsibility of doing the maps in the past. By law, you have to oversee the redistricting process. You were elected to do it, you are paid to do it, and your vote alone approves the final map. In the end, you may decide not to vote for the maps this committee suggests. We, the community member volunteers, wanted to be prepared for these meetings and be able to make educated recommendations in these meetings. The NAACP Memphis branch, which I represent, Memphis A. Philip Randolph Institute, which Mr. Moore represents, along with the NAACP Memphis branch, Votes for All, and Stand for Children, all have a history of interest in redistricting issues at the federal, state, and local level. These organizations decided to host a redistricting class. As Mr. Harris, a volunteer community committee member, subject matter expert, and presenter at the class alluded to last week, a Redistricting 101, or as I say, Redistricting for Dummies. Now, as volunteer community committee members, if we did something wrong by attending a class to become educated on our responsibilities, we are sorry. Alan Wade, the council's attorney, has not been available at these meetings for us to speak with. Nothing at the class was meant to sway committee members. It was only informational. Again, we apologize for creating this unintentional distraction. We appreciate the opportunity to serve, and we are ready to get on to the work of redistricting to meet our April deadline. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Randolph. Councilman Jones.
Thank you. And as Memphis City Council Chairman, let me apologize for not fully educating or having our council here to educate that anytime you're serving on a public body such as this, it requires that any meeting, volunteer or not, paid or not, any meeting comprising more than two individuals where you could be discussing topics that you would vote upon, it has to be noticed and the public has to be available to attend those type of meetings. That was not disclosed to you. And I apologize from a council standpoint for not making that known when we first started meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. I definitely appreciate that from both of you all and for allowing everyone else to hear that as well. Were there any other comments towards this item?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
So as the person who conducted the class, and it actually wasn't redistricting for dummies, I wouldn't call it that or characterize it as such. The presentation that I gave is a presentation that I've given in public to the Rotary Club, the NAACP, the Commercial Appeal. I believe I was interviewed by the Daily Memphian as well. Same information. There were no mapping proposals, so to speak, or something that we would vote on. Mr. Wade would have been, or others would have been perfectly welcome to conduct that class in my stead. Again, I think the public has so on one hand, we can't say we want transparency. And on the other hand, we use legal mechanisms to keep the public from receiving certain information. As a volunteer and also as a person who's worked on this extensively over the years, I would like to openly share this to any and everyone. And I certainly wouldn't want to have to send a public notice if I wanted to go back to the NAACP, or if the Rotary Club said, hey, you did that last presentation, can you come do it again? Certainly we want to be careful. We don't want to create any problems, legal and otherwise. But I don't think we should be put in a position when we're trying to teach. And at some point, there's been a lot of talk about transparency. This is the most transparent process that the council has taken, at least in my memory, over the last 30 years. And I can read a quote from the Memphis Flyer several years ago. It says, whose district map for this year's municipal election was provided relatively late in the game after private consultation with his members. So we can't have one standard for this group and then we have another standard for ourselves at the same time say that we're worried about public trust, transparency, and I guess potential violation of sunshine law. We will be careful, but I will not be held to a standard and not be able to share information with the public. Now, certainly maybe we can do it more open, but I'll be glad to give the PowerPoint presentation to any and everybody who would like to look at it and share it openly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Vice Chairman Moore.
Chairman Jones, I appreciate your comments, but my problem is we've had this our third meeting. Your legal expert is not here to give us face to face his point of view. In his article, he said we possibly have violated the Sunshine Law. We need to know the exacts. So if we violate it, we won't violate it. We're not here to violate any laws. We're here to try to make sure this redistricting process is open and equitable to all citizens of Memphis.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Moore. Ms. Hyman.
I think I would like for us to move on to the business that we came here for. I don't want to speak about who's not here unless we have requested written information that we can analyze and process. And I appreciate the comments and the apologies. I will say, as having been on the council staff, that is their responsibility when people are about to address a meeting to advise them of that. And that did not happen. So it is not the fault of the committee. It's not the fault of the council members. And so I'd like to move on so that we can do what we're here to do and to the next item of our agenda if everyone doesn't mind.
Thank you, Ms. Hyman. All right, we're clear to move. We're going to look at subcommittees before committee discussion items. I assure you city mapping will get to you definitely pretty soon. So for subcommittees, since we did receive that information, and I will say, Ms. Hyman, you did request some information to be brought back, and so I guess that would make it a reason to say something. But you did request information yourself. But we do want to let's move to sub-items committee. We're gonna have communications and mapping. Let's go ahead and do that member selection now. I remember, and it was stated on the virtual meeting that Dr. Charles McKinney did say he wanted to be in communications, so I'm saying that out loud since he's not present. Who else would like to be in the communications subcommittee? Mr. Randolph and Ms. Guerrero. Okay. Any further? All right. Mapping subcommittee. Ms. Bennett, Dr. Harris, and Mr. Ogier. All right. So we have Dr. Charles McKinney, Mr. Ian Randolph, Ms. Isela Guerrero. In the subcommittee of communication and subcommittee of mapping, we have Ms. Lisa Bennett, Dr. D. Harris. What's the D stand for? I'm sorry. Derek. Just making sure I wasn't going to call you nothing else. I was thinking Devon in my head. Dr. Derek Harris, and then Mr. Marsha OGA. So for those subcommittees, those are the members unless otherwise publicly stated, and we put that out via email notification. Go ahead and once we're ending, we want to make sure that you three with each are having a chance to meet in between. Make sure that this meeting is put out. You can give it to us, give it to Brian Backus. We will put that out publicly and also share whatever method it is that is open. So if that is Zoom link that shows it's streaming from where you're meeting, if that's just a Zoom, however that is, give that to us and we'll put it out so you don't have to go through the burden of trying to get out to all the media. We'll make sure that that's put out and that we can do that in a timely manner.
Yeah. Sorry, I apologize. I didn't realize there were two committees. I'll be on the mapping committee, subcommittee.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there going to be more?
That's the only two subcommittees. Mapping. Okay. So show added to the mapping committee, Ms. Brooke Hyman and Ms. Janika White. So also remember, committee members, you all have each other's email addresses. We won't be sharing everyone's email publicly for sake of your privacy, but just make sure whenever you're choosing to meet, you tell us, give us some time so we can put that out a few days before. And that way, if any other members want to show up, that's fine too, because we have public notice for that. Any thoughts, questions, comments, pushbacks on that item? Yes, sir.
Is there
Your mic, do your mic so they can hear you on the stream.
Is there a suggested time frame that you would like us to have our first meeting in?
Whatever's best for y'all as soon as you can.
Thank you.
Whatever's works for y'all. Let's move to the originally item 5, committee discussion items. We discussed non-term limited members in last meeting. Notification and communication, all official communication will come from Council Chief of Staff, also my legislative analyst, Brian Backus. So you should only be receiving communications from him about redistricting from the City Council officially. So make sure we have any updated emails, and any communication you need for that. All right, Mr. Blankenbeckler. I got it. Close. Blankenbeckler. There we go. All right, I'm on a roll. All right, so we're looking at item D, mapping tools and scenario planning. I believe this is what you have for us here. Yes? Okay. And your presentation is on the computer or is it on verbally?
All the maps on the desktop.
Okay. And if you turn on that microphone, we should be able to follow along with you.
No, I numbered them. I numbered them 1 through 5. No, on the desktop.
Oh, you have to excuse me. First time I've ever done this. It is now. Oh, full screen, full screen. Where is full screen on this? Trying. Yeah, full screen. That's going to be, no, that's not it. Sorry, I'm just a little lost this morning or this afternoon. The key to push this full screen. Oh, there it is. Okay. Good. Yes, ma'am. Okay, the first map we're looking at is the voting precincts as they existed in 2021. This was the initial data set that we were given. The black lines on this map represents the current city limits, which have taken into account the recent de-annexations that we did in 2019 and 2020.
Can you say, do you remember which, like just neighborhoods they were, just for folks listening?
In 2019, we de-annexed the river bottom area, which would be, let's see, this area over here. And we also de-annexed the Eads area, which would be this area up here where the city used to go all the way to the city limits, or to the county limits. On January 1st, 2020, we de-annexed 3 areas: the Southwind Windike area, which is down here, the Rocky Point area, which is over here on the east side of the city, and also the South Cordova area. All of those de-annexations took place at midnight, 1 second after midnight on January 1st of either 2019 or 2020.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Okay, Dr. Harris.
I'd like to find out, you have the total population of folks that were de-annexed as a result of that change? Total number?
Of just the areas that were de-annexed, their total population? Okay.
I don't have that data readily available, but I can provide that to you. Seems how I was involved in that as well.
Okay.
I just had a question of clarification. Where it says right there, that little centerpiece, like 05-02, I just want to make sure I'm understanding the map correctly. Is that portion also a portion that's been de-annexed as well?
No.
0502?
Like right there in the middle?
No, ma'am, that's Bridgewater. It has never been in the city.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so also on this map, you have the 2020 voting precincts, which are each, well, actually, I'll go a little bit larger here. This map also has the city council boundaries as they existed prior to the redistricting that took place in August. Those are shown in roughly colors that show the boundary of each of the council areas. Within each of those is the voting precinct and the number that was assigned to that particular voting precinct. So, for example, 0404. This was the preliminary redistrict information that we got from the county voting folks.
The election commission?
Yes.
Okay.
We later received a updated voting precinct redistricting data set roughly June of last year.
And prior to June 2022, you didn't have a new data set from the election commission?
Well, we had a preliminary data set, which is what this data is showing.
Okay. From 2021.
Right.
Okay. And at any point, committee members, you have a question or comment or clarification, please feel free to let us know. Okay.
Point of clarification, Madam Chairman.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes to the question I believe committee member White had a minute ago. Because this is countywide, as I said in the last meeting, the nomenclature for the precincts used to be something entirely different. So that's why that may seem a little bit confusing. So that 5 represents, I believe, the county commission district, and then that other number represents whatever numbers that the election commission gave them. These precincts used to be named something entirely different just about a little less than 2 years ago. So that creates some confusion. And I think there was a question about being able to go back and look at and compare the old precincts or what's happened between 20 and now, or the last redistricting process and now, which is going to be extremely difficult. It can be done, but the precinct nomenclature has completely changed. The old structure was based on house districts, and it was changed in this last redistricting effort from the state, and this was done statewide to, I guess, standardize the way the state's redistricting process is set up. And so that's why that's a little bit confusing. This is countywide. So just a point of clarification.
Thank you.
Information.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
was very helpful. Thank
That's
you.
helpful.
That's clarification. Yeah, I didn't know why they did that. The second map here is the 2021 council districts. It's the only thing that's been done on this map is to take out the areas that were de-annexed. So there is no redistricting on this map. This is purely the council districts as they existed prior to redistricting, minus the areas that got de-annexed. This was the map that we've been using up until the council approved the, was it August 22 changes for the November election. This map includes both the council district and council districts for individual council members and the two super districts. The super districts are displayed in a kind of a brownish colored numbering system, 9 on the east side of the city, 8 on the west side.
Thank you, brother. Can you delineate the boundary for 8 and 9? Show them where the boundary is.
The boundary between 8 and 9 follows this line right here. It does this weird hook and then comes back down. So basically all of 5, all of 2, most of 1, and a small portion of 4 and 3 are included in 8, or excuse me, in 9, and then everything else is in 8.
Now, can I ask you 2 questions? You might know, you might not. I'm still posing it. And Mr. Harris, if you know, let me know. Has this line for super districts shifted
For the
since the
yes,
since
it has.
redistricting, or did it shift due to annexation, de-annexation?
It shifted based on when I did the maps for the redistricting, I included entire voting precincts, and because the voting precincts have changed their boundaries in order to keep an entire precinct or a voting precinct within a super district, they also had to move with those voting precincts. The map is slightly different than it is for the 2021, but not terribly. It's going to be slight shifts to the east and west, depending on whether or not the county moved the voting precinct line.
But it was due to precincts.
It was
That's
due to
why, to
precinct-
keep
the
whole precincts
precinct,
together.
That's correct.
Okay. And then also, because I know this has been put out on Facebook or something, if the super district line shifts, does that determine then the single district?
No.
So if someone was afraid that wherever their house is, if that super district line shifted, does that mean their single member district changes?
When I was analyzing this data, I the super districts and the single member districts were treated as two separate entities.
Mr. OJ, make sure your a mic is on so they can hear you.
Yeah, I think I asked this last time, but I'm still kind of confused. I see in the packet that we have split precincts, like precincts that were split. And I think last time we confirmed that they can be split. So I'm still confused on why the goal was to have them not split between the 21 and the 22 maps. Like, why does it matter if they're split or not split?
Mainly for ease of the voting, it makes it a lot harder for the voting if you're partially, if a person is in, say, voting precinct 404 and they're voting all for one council member or in one super district, that's easier for the voting machines to program than it is to know, okay, you live in X at X address, is that going to be in this council district or another? It just, for a quick turnaround, it made it a lot easier to put everybody within a voting precinct into a single precinct.
Okay, but it's not required or necessary. It just helps the voting commission when they're programming the voting machines.
I can't answer to whether or not it can be done that way, but for ease of analysis, it was done that way.
Okay. That's helpful to know too.
Madam Chairman?
We don't need any hiccups at the election commission. Dr. Harris.
No, go ahead.
It was my understanding that they were split depending on the number of registered voters were at a particular precinct. And it was necessary to meet the requirement for a set number of voters for every area. And that's why it was moved over. So it is a possibility that a individual could shift from one super district to the other if they're right there on that borderline. Am I correct?
I don't want to speak for the election commission, but just let me say.
Let me back up. I don't think the election commission did this.
Well, if it's precinct related, then it would be the election commission decides the size of, well, state law decides the size of the precincts, but they decide how they're set up, how many you have and where they are. For example, and this is a point I wanted to make for point of information, we literally have fewer precincts now and more voters than we did just some time ago. So I find it sort of odd why we would shrink the number of precincts and have more registered voters at the same time if the argument is we're trying to make it more efficient. So again, that's an answer or a question for the election commission. The solution would be to increase the number of precincts, which will avoid it. Let me give you one quick example. I'm gonna shut up. No, I know, but there are precincts that's got like no people in them, according to the data that I saw. So, you know, what's that all about? It doesn't really make sense. And that creates this part of this problem.
Those precincts that have zero population, those are the area inside the city of Memphis that fall within that precinct. There might be no Memphis residents inside that voting precinct. So even though there's no people, though residents of Memphis living in that precinct was included because it is part of, or the territory itself falls within the city of Memphis.
I think the point I was trying to make is that
so to give you an
more
example,
precincts would have actually helped with
this area right here in the northwest part of Memphis is the Police and Fire Training Academy. There are no Memphis residents living in that particular precinct. That precinct covers a lot of more territory, and those folks are voting in Shelby County because they live in Shelby County, but because the territory falls within the city of Memphis, it is included within the data set.
Thank you for that question. Also, well, okay. Yeah, you can continue. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Any other questions on this map? Like I said, in June of last year, we received the updated vote.
Can you go back?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
to the previous map?
It's on both of the maps. That precinct 502, what's the context behind that?
502.
Of why it's not in Bridgewater, wherever that
The
is?
Bridgewater Donut?
Mm-hmm.
I have no clue why that was never annexed.
Oh, okay. Okay. Because everything around it is.
But it has not been in the city ever.
Okay. We'll leave that to the urban mysteries then. We can go to the next map.
So in June of 2022, we received the new approved voting precincts. So all the analysis had to be redone with the new precincts because there were several changes. One of the ones that stood out most was 0404. Because if you noticed on the previous map, 0404 is this large block here. They split 0403 and part of 0407 and made it its own voting precinct. And when they did that, they shifted all of the numbers of the precincts. So 0404 became 0405, 0405 became 0406, so on and so forth through that area. A lot of the precincts were redrawn, which added a lot of confusion to the process at the time.
Question, I guess, is just maybe logistical of sorts. Why do the colors shift every time? And why are they different from the maps versus the precinct map? Just thinking of it as just ease of access to read it as a everyday person, which we are.
I tried to stay with the same color scheme through the entire, all the maps that were produced. A lot of it has to do with ease of reading.
Okay. Yeah, but the colors are different. They're different. Like a purple on one isn't a purple on the other.
Part of the problem that the software has is sometimes the colors that are on the screen aren't necessarily the colors that get printed.
So it's a software
thing. From the software. So the printed maps, because of the way it translates to the printer, it may come out as one color, while the PDFs, they translate the color in another way, and so there may be some color differences that way, just because of the way the different hardware and software that works in between.
Okay. And then also, is there a way we could get an overlay? I know Councilwoman Johnson brought this up, overlay of the changes to see without moving your eyes back and forth, and thinking you caught the change of the whole map, or is that not possible with the software?
It is possible. It's going to be very confusing to view. I do have an example of that. Let me jump over here to 5. 5 is the map showing both the 2021, the preliminary 2021 voting precincts and the finalized 2022 voting precincts. There's two different colors on there. The 2021 data is shown with a gray outline. The 2022 data is shown with a red line for the border. So, like these two districts here, this is all one voting precinct in 2021. In 2022, they split off this area from these two districts to make a separate. The labeling on it shows both the 2021 designation and the 2022 designation. So like this one here is 0404 in black, which was the 2021 designation. And then once it was finalized, it became 0405. The problem gets to be once you do this citywide, then it's going to be really confusing to see, okay, what am I looking at? Did this precinct become part of its own precinct, or is it just a splitting of one precinct off? Because the lines get really hard to discern when you're looking at it at a much larger.
Yeah, Mike, get your mic.
The concern was, in general, for the district lines, you're zooming in to a level of individual precincts. But the question mark was, could you just do it for the overall districts, all of them?
Are you talking about at a city level,
like
or for
map.
each council district?
Each district, show where it was and then where it's now. So they'll see where the boundaries did actually change.
Yes, ma'am.
And then do Super 8 different, and then do Super 9 different, separate.
So 3 different overlay presentations, images.
9 maps.
8, 9 on there. Well, no, she was saying a whole one, and then one showing 8 as a
So
whole, and then one
you
showing
want
9 as a
those
whole.
by count, a map for each council district showing the old boundaries and the new boundaries.
9 maps.
4, 7, and 8, 9. Okay. I guess it's easy to make all of it on one.
Right. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. We can do that.
Yeah, I agree, Councilwoman. I think visually that may be helpful. The precinct, like you said, Mr. Black and Beckman, it definitely can get tedious on the eyes, especially if you're blowing that up. We have any comments, questions, thoughts so far? Okay. All right. You good?
I would like to know the maps that were just requested, is that something we can receive electronically, or would we need to wait until the next full committee meeting to get hard copies?
Hard copies or digital copies?
Are you
Right, that's
able to
what I'm
send it
asking.
digitally? We can always print it, but are you all able to send it to us digitally so we can disperse it before we meet next? Is what she's asking.
I'll have my staff start working on this tomorrow, so we should have something either tomorrow or Monday, and we'll email Mr. Bacchus the PDFs of the 9 maps.
Thank you. I'm assuming you asking it for subcommittees, right? Okay.
Any other questions on this map?
Any other questions on this map? Okay.
This map is the post-August approval of the council districts. It's using the same color schemes and methodology that we used on the 2021 council district maps in order to keep it similar to what people are normally used to looking at. The super districts, again, still shown as a brownish line. Hard to follow it. With the council districts as they were approved, shown in the same color scheme that was used in the 2021 map.
Any committee members, questions or comments on this particular map?
I don't have any questions on the map, but I just want to make sure I understand what I'm looking at and for what purposes. In my mind, and maybe you all can help me with this, in my mind, I would like to see the districts before and then its comparison to the districts as recommended for redistricting. Is that's what you requested? Okay. Okay, thank you. But in front of us right now, what would be those two maps to reference that we have right now? Do we have those two right now? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Before you do the overlay, I'm just trying to see, do we have that already?
Yes. Right here. With 2022 city of Memphis. So that's what we are right now.
Okay.
As of today. Now,
And then,
what we changed was from this 2021. We changed it ever so slightly because we had that District 4 special election.
right.
So we had to change to this from this. Had we not had the de-annexation, this would have still been in place, and we would be looking to change this as opposed to this.
okay, so then that leads me in one more question. So do we have a map now from, and maybe I didn't understand correctly, I thought that mapping did like a general recommendation based on, and I may be mixing two different things. I thought mapping did a general redistricting based on just numbers, and then that map was sent to Attorney Wade for Attorney Wade to make sure it complied with the consent decree. Am I making sense? Or am I jumping ahead of myself here?
You're making sense.
I'm just going from what I heard at the other meeting, so I'm just trying to make it all work together in my head.
Brian,
Okay, and that's what I'm asking. So I'm looking for those two maps. Do we have those two maps, the map that you all recommended? Okay, so those are the, okay, all right, thank you. I think
Go ahead.
Like, I'm confused.
Attorney White, I do believe you are understanding the process, because that is what we were told last time, that GIS looked at the numbers and they made recommendations, sent it back to Attorney Wade. He made some tweaks to it in order to get it to line up legally according to whatever guidelines this requirement for the various districts separated. And that's exactly what, Okay, you can finish it then.
Can you get it's a wireless mic that Andy had.
Yeah, you can sit
Yeah.
up here, you have a mic.
I don't know what the 21 map is you're talking about. We got a map that included, okay, I think I have a copy. If it's what the state went off of, they gave me some, I don't know what, I hadn't looked at them yet. So if the state did their numbers based on the two areas not being de-annexed, those de-annexations didn't take effect until 12/31/2021. So we had to remove those, redo the numbers, and then mapping gave me a map that showed the existing precincts as reconstituted using the new precinct layout, period. Okay, so that's as it existed.
After de-annexation.
Yes,
Okay.
as it existed.
Okay.
Okay, and then what I did was did a number of analyses and proposed that we make changes in a few of the districts. Then they took those changes that I suggested and gave us the 2022 map that we ended up adopting, okay? All right, now, to get to this question about the distinction between the two maps that you want, let me look at my numbers. That should be fairly simple, considering that we didn't move but 8 precincts. 8 out of 100. Everything else is the same. So he can do the stripe lines that you want of those 8 and show the new configuration mostly in 7, 4, 5, and 1. And they will be very slight modifications.
But Ms. Wade, you said 7, 4, 5, and 1?
Yeah, 7 got the most. 7 got something from 1.
Okay, but you got 3 too then, because you took from 3 and gave 4.
I took from 3 on the tail end, 1102, 1104, 1107. I don't remember the 2 numbers. Gave those to 2, moved 1 precinct out of 4 into 6, another precinct out of 7 into 6, and then a number of precincts out of 1 into 7. I think that's the way it worked.
Okay, wait, 1.
So there's
One, okay,
there are
1,
8
2,
precincts.
1, 2, 4, and 7.
Yes, yeah.
But 1, 2.
And I'm just going on memory. I hadn't.
Okay. Well, no. So what I'm looking at though, I'm looking at 22, and let's.
Okay, so there was one that went from 5 to 2. There was a swap between 5 and 4. 6 got 1. I think we moved something back out of 3 into 6. I mean, there were slight variations. I can give him the numbers of those precincts, and he can give you the map with the hatches in it.
Yeah, and I guess you have the benefit of looking at the precinct numbers. What I'm looking at is just how these lines changed on these
And that's
maps.
what he will do.
Okay.
He'll be able to
Okay.
take those precincts, because they're all contiguous, and he'll give you hatches that'll show you how the ultimate footprint changed for each one. And it shouldn't be a whole lot of hatches, is what I'm telling you.
That's all I have. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah, Mike.
Attorney Wade, we have this handout that you gave to us initially when you presented your recommendation for the 22 change.
Yes.
Is that information in there? Should I be?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I should be able to
Absolutely.
find those precincts.
It shows precinct moves.
Right.
On each of those sheets, it shows the source of where those things were moved, and it also has the pictures of those particular precincts, street level pictures that were added or removed from each one, and they should be in your documentation.
And everybody did receive one of those today. For your information.
Yeah, everybody on the committee received a copy of that packet. Sorry, it was my original, so you might see some notes in there, but don't worry, I ain't talking about y'all in my writing. But you'll also get that digitally as well. We'll send it to you when we get that from council records. And for the public, that is available through council meeting records. I'm not sure. I think that meeting was in August 2022. So you should be able to go back and find that on the agenda items for that. Attorney Way, I did want to ask if you could share, because we got from City Mapping last meeting that he just does the maps just based on census population. No context, no, just straight numbers. And said that once we give it to you and then you just supported that as well, that you do some sort of analysis and then propose changes and send it back. Can you talk about that analysis that you go through?
Somewhat. I'm looking at your resolution, and it's basically straight about one man, one vote, which is a constitutional analysis to make every district substantially equal to every other district. And I'm saying substantially because it can't be exact, simply because of the way the General Assembly draws the precincts. They aren't. So we take their precincts and we have to put them within the confines of a district, which means some of them will be higher or lower. The one man, one vote analysis, which is all I saw this ordinance, this resolution addressing, is a mere mathematical calculation. It has nothing to do with race, gender, age. It's all about one human being being equal to one human being. And that's the analysis that you start out with, and that's what I did. The numbers that you show on the left-hand column of each district are the one man, one vote, the totals, and then it shows that the total in each district, and it has to be within 5% above or 5% below the average number. The total number, I think, is 90,400. The average of each district, it can be 5% above that or 5% below that. And that's all that's done with the one man, one vote, period. Nothing else. And that's based on a number of Supreme Court cases, Baker v. Carr being one of the leading ones that originated in Tennessee. And it basically says that you redistrict for one man, one vote purposes substantially based on the census numbers, period. End of story.
So would the analysis that City Mapping did based on census numbers not come out with that? Why would that not come out in that way? What Mr. Blackenbeck would do?
Our existing numbers were based on existing numbers. And if you remember, your district lost 10,000 people. So mapping's map would not be substantially equal. It would have to be adjusted by a human being to make it substantially equal to every other district. And the way you do that is you move contiguous precincts from one to the other so that you equalize all of them.
And just to clarify, because we had some questions make sure I get y'all after this question. We had some questions last meeting, does race play into anything for analysis for precincts and population?
One man, one vote, no.
Mr. OJ, you had your hand, and then Dr. Harris. You didn't have your hand up? Okay. Make sure your mic on, so the folks streaming can hear you.
This is just a repeat of the question I had earlier. Now that Attorney Wade, if you could give some more insight. So I noticed that like some of the precincts are split between districts, and that was confirmed. And I don't understand why why can't we just split all the precincts? Why can't we just use census blocks and get closer to the numbers we're looking for and not have these crazy looking districts?
If you look at the presentation, what we tried to do is avoid split precincts. That is not preferred. And we tried to align ourselves with the General Assembly's configurations. And therefore, we removed, I think there were 20 splits, we removed them all. And we did it on a race-neutral and numerically based analysis, looking at the registered voters in each of the splits, and the ones that had the most percentage allocable, they were allocated based on the majority being in a particular precinct or not. And you avoid having confusion in terms of the election commission administering elections, because then you're looking at census blocks, you're splitting things, people go to a precinct to vote and they said, well, my guy ain't on there. I mean, it just creates a lot of confusion to have splits.
Okay. So the main reason with the lack of splits is because the election commission gets confused with making sure that people are voting in the right district.
Yeah, and it just, yeah.
It's not legal.
And then it would be inconsistent with the intent of the General Assembly that we try to track their precinct configurations.
We're supposed to do that.
I believe we are.
So now I have a question. So there was some mention.
Hold on, Attorney White.
Oh, sorry.
Dr. Harris was first. Did you want to let her go, or you want to go ahead? Okay.
I just wanted a point of clarification. So I know at one of the meetings there was some mention, and that's what I was trying to get clarity on earlier, was that there had to be, the redistricting had to also align with a consent decree that was based on race. And so that's why I just wanted clarity on that.
Okay, so that's a whole different, you are.
Okay.
That's a whole different analysis than one man, one vote. As I read this document, that's what y'all said y'all were trying to accomplish. You weren't trying to get into the consent decree. And once you get into that, there are a lot of restrictions in terms of what I can discuss, because I'm not going to educate people to sue us. That's not my job. My job is to make with this legal. There is a consent decree, and we have faithfully followed it since 1995. That consent decree basically is the paradigm by which this council became a majority African-American council. I believe it is shown to have worked faithfully. It was the council's configuration that the court deemed to be legal. I think there was some, it rejected other proposed configurations, interestingly one by the NAACP that didn't want to make any changes, but even the Justice Department determined that that might be racially violative of the act. So, and if you look at historically, I think right now we have 8 African-American council members. I believe that's 61.54%. The African-American population on the census is 61.57%. So there are a number of different legal hurdles and issues dealing with voting rights compliance. And that would take a class, almost a law school class, for me to go through all of the permutations. The thing about maintaining the cohesiveness in the plan in terms of preserving existing neighborhoods and voting patterns is that you eliminate some of the potential objections that you can have to a plan under the Voting Rights Act. So if you're talking about you want to turn it upside down and do all these other kind of things, you're going to run into a lot of risks that you may not want to open Pandora's box about. That's just my opinion, but what do I know?
Ms. White, do you have any more questions?
That led to a lot of questions, but I'll gather my thoughts now. Well, I do have one question. So it seems, okay, I just want to make sure that we all are on the same page. Because the consent decree came up, and in my mind, I was thinking, okay, that needs to be a part of our considerations for the purposes of this committee. But now I seem to understand that based on the resolution, that's not a part of our task, that really we're supposed to be focused on the initial analysis, which is one man, one vote. Am I correct in what I'm gathering now, or no? See Councilwoman Johnson shaking her head no.
Councilwoman
I just want to know
Johnson.
what it is I'm supposed to be doing, and I want to know that I have the information that I need to be able to do it.
Attorney Wade, I guess we got two settings here. We're gonna have the setting of what the resolution is requesting, and then we're gonna have the setting of the legal jurisdictions that we have to govern ourselves by. So we can make a decision under the resolution, but then it has to be turned back over to you to make sure we've met all the legal ramifications.
That's absolutely right.
Okay, I got you.
So that, as I viewed it, that was, my job was not to interfere with your processes, but let y'all decide what kind of plans and permutations you want to come up with. And then I have to take it through a whole different analysis to determine whether it's legal or not.
Now I do understand.
Okay. This is, I'll just say for the record, this is also going into our question and answer session. So Dr. Harris has a question, and we'll allow for one more, but I do want to keep us on a strict time of close to 5 o'clock as possible. Defer. Okay, Ms. Bennett.
Referring to the resolution, I'm not an attorney, and I'm hearing a lot of language, consent decree, intent, one man, one vote. I am looking at the fourth whereas with Tennessee Code annotated section 654102 provides that municipalities may redistrict into new wards whenever, for proper reasons, they deem expedient so to do. The newly released 2020 United States Census data providing proper reasons. And I see that phrase repeated twice. So that means it's significant to me. So Tennessee Code annotated, redistricted into new wards whenever for proper reasons. That does not say one man, one vote. That leans more towards intent. I do not know all of the information in the consent decree, and it seems like we won't know either. But that seems to me that the committee is able to deem proper reasons for making adjustments based upon particular criteria.
If I can respond to that, I think that language, proper reasons, I don't even know why the language would even reference the census if it wasn't referring to one man, one vote. But if you deviate from that, proper reasons are defined by a number of cases. And that doesn't mean you can just do whatever you want to do. It means that you have to have proper reasons, and overlaying all of that is the voting rights decree.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
Madam Chair, I understand you want to be respectful of time, but since we have Attorney Wade here, I want him to explain to us the violation of the possible violation of the Sunshine Law, that the committee
Madam
meeting.
Chair, before we discuss that, I think we take a vote, because we've already discussed that. We've established that there was an error, and the error is, in the resolution, it deems us to stand by the Open Records Act. When we had our meeting last week, I said the reason that everyone is uptight about is open records is a requirement that when there are two or more people discussing, especially council members, something that we voted on, and now us as 26 members, that proper notice be given to the public, that they be allowed to come, that the media be allowed to come. That did not happen, and that's why he gave that warning. We have discussed it. I would like for us to move on, because the longer we discuss that, we are deviating from the reason we are here, and I feel like it is childish and immature, and I don't want to do that. I want to discuss voting lines. If you want to know the Open Records Act, we can pull it up. But it's not, I don't think that's what we are here for. And
Ms.
that's not
Hyman,
what people put us up here for. So I move that we don't discuss it.
I respect you for that discretion of the chair, since Mr. Wade is here and it wasn't a discussion, it was a request for him to respond. So he will be the only one speaking.
I believe
Thank you.
the opinion I gave to my client addressed it in spades. It spells it out 100%. I don't know what I can do to deviate from that. When you splinter off into groups, it said the act says you can't have informal assemblages in an attempt to circumvent the act. When you are appointed as a body by a governing act of a municipality, you become a governing body for the purposes of the Open Meetings Act, and you have to comply with it. And notwithstanding that, this body has made its decision that all of this will be transparent and open, and I don't know what more I can add than what I've already provided.
Thank you, Attorney Wade. I did say he was going to be the only one to speak on that, since he wasn't here when we did it, when we talked about it earlier. Chairman Jones, is this on something else, or did you want to repeat what you said earlier?
Yes, I wanted to repeat what I said earlier because
as the
Mr.
chairman
Wade,
of the full council, go ahead.
because Mr. Wade wasn't here. So, Mr. Wade, what I said earlier before you arrived, though, is that we have members, the lay members of the public, who may not have been aware of that. And so, what I said earlier is that I took responsibility for our not articulating that to them. So, I think that, so your presence is going to be helpful. And had you been here at the beginning to say that to them, they may have operated in a different manner. We didn't tell them that.
And I'm not casting blame on anybody. I have an obligation to report to my client because we're judged by that same standard. And Mr. Drees is going to call us on it anytime we do it.
But I still but what we know as elected bodies, we can have another whatever committee that we come up with, and they're going to have to abide by it. But if it's somebody who's never been involved in the public sphere before, they may not know that. And so I feel that it's our responsibility to tell that to any committee or body.
I agree.
In doing that. So we need to do that going forward. Thank you.
I agree.
Well said, Chair. We're not going to.
I just have one question.
Not on this, right?
not acting on that.
No, not on this at all. Nowhere near it. I'm trying to end it, Dr. Dr. Harris. Okay, we'll bring that up next time. But I did think that was important to address. But I do definitely want to respect you all's time and you all's opinions. City mapping, I definitely want to thank you for coming in and giving that. We do appreciate the work that you play, the role that you play in here. As far as mapping, so I appreciate you being able to do that presentation. And whenever Mr. Blackenbeckler gets that information to us digitally, we will disseminate that as part of the minutes. Okay. So the last thing is next meeting dates. Well, after next meeting dates. These seem to be okay in council calendar. Hopefully they're okay in each other's calendar. We're trying not to hit Tuesdays for y'all, as well as we got the Blight Authority Committee as well. Looking at Thursday. Hold on now. Sir. Come on Looking at Thursday, February 16th. All these are 3:30 p.m. And the next being Monday, February 27th. So just to reiterate for folks watching and folks who may have came in, that April 14th deadline from the Election Commission is the full council deadline. So we want to make sure anything, if this committee submits anything, it has enough time to submit it, that Attorney Wade has enough time to review it with legal eyes, and then that is being able to brought to full council for an up or down vote.
Pardon me, I have a question. We keep saying that. Can we outline what that timeline would be? Because what is the last council meeting? Do we need to make sure the minutes are approved? If it's an ordinance, it would have to follow 3 readings. So we still haven't given a deadline because that really puts our deadline at like March.
Yeah, that's what we said earlier.
Okay,
so,
okay. I wasn't in here. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Any thoughts about the 16th or the 27th meeting? All right. February 16th, February 27th. As we said earlier, and this goes along to what was just brought up a few minutes ago, subcommittees, you all decide on when you would like to meet in between times. Give Mr. Backus that information. We will disseminate that to the public. Make sure it's a way that is open and accessible, whether that be Zoom streaming you, Zoom overall, in whatever way is best for you to do that. At least 48 hours notice for that. Everyone has each other's email contact. We ask that you keep each other's emails confidential and not share that with the public, but to share that, have that amongst yourselves to communicate about setting that meeting that you're gonna let us know about so we can make sure that that's public. Questions? Mr. OJ. Oh, and then Ms. White, I'm sorry.
I just can't make that 16th, so I won't be here, but.
Okay. We definitely appreciate your dedication to attendance, Ms. White.
I just wanted to know, do we have, and maybe this is something that we would have to develop within the subcommittees, but do we have specifically kind of, and I'm trying to figure out exactly how to say this, but where exactly what it is that we need to be producing from the committee? So like, for instance, question A, is it 1-to-1? Or you see what I'm saying? Do we have like some
in the
actual,
subcommittees?
okay,
You all
so
be
in the
discussing
subcommittees,
it.
we need to develop kind of the criteria for what it is we need to be bringing to the committee.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Any other business in this committee? All right. I got Mr. O'Shea. All right. I appreciate you.